Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Path to Play. It is Rory here.
And Valentina.
Today, we will be diving into youth soccer tryouts, specifically for those younger ages. You'll notice a common pattern with some of our past episodes here as we talk about tryouts, and your path is going to be unique to everyone else's.
Yeah, there's no right way to do things ever on Path to Play, and obviously there are going to be a lot of common threads from our previous episodes. If you haven't listened to already, you'll probably catch on to them here. But we're excited to talk about them because it was a good way to reminisce on previous tryouts and
Mhm.
experiences for us.
But before we get into that, we're going to start with question of the day, which is what was the most festive thing you did for St. Patrick's Day?
So obviously Boston is a wonderful place to spend your St. Patrick's Day. We experienced our we weren't here last year, so we experienced our first St. Patrick's Day parade, which takes place in Southie, and we went with our friends, and I think my favorite part was watching a solo procession of a dog, and everybody was cheering. I don't really know what organization it pertained to, but it was a very well-behaved dog, and it was super cute, and the whole parade was just fun to be at. What was your favorite part?
The parade was very cool, but after we went and had some Irish food and I had an Irish steak pie, which was amazing. I think
Mhm.
that was definitely my highlight.
Yeah, that was a very good spot to eat at. If anyone needs recommendations for good Irish pub food, we have a few for those as well.
All right, so jumping into tryouts, do you wanna walk us through how they're set up?
Yes, I would love to. So, tryouts for youth soccer clubs are typically going to look slightly different depending on the club that you're trying out for. However, they'll definitely share some similarities in how they're set up. And what I mean by the setup is that you'll obviously have a designated age group that you're going to try out for. And when you show up, you'll get placed into groups if they already have an idea of their rosters. Some clubs will have this be the case, especially the ones that are a little bit more elite or competitive. And usually timing matters. The older you are, the less movement there is across different clubs. When you're younger, I think it's a little bit more dynamic, the whole environment, and it'll be similar setup where there's age groups, you'll go to your age group, and across the course of a few days, sometimes up to a week, I think I had a couple of tryouts that went up to a week. You'll be playing in drills, you'll be participating in scrimmages, really just a whole dedicated space for coaches to evaluate you, observe you in team environments, observe your skills, where you are as a player, how you interact with all of the other players who are trying out who might already be on the team. So that's typically how they're set up. But like I said, they'll vary across different clubs. And obviously, like all other things we've talked about in the youth soccer world, they're going to be different environments where you might experience tryouts. For example, the elite player development programs that we've touched on in the past that are outside of club. Your high school tryouts will also look different. So we want to focus more on the youth soccer club tryouts today.
Yeah, I agree with your point on there being a lot more shifting going on for the younger age groups because at those ages, you have so many kids coming in and out of the club because, I mean, the kids are 8 to 12, so it's nothing's really set. But once you get up to those older age groups, the tryouts do tend to look a little different. But in these tryouts, what would you say coaches are looking for?
I think when you're younger, they just want to see that you're engaged, that you're working as a team, that you're getting involved in plays. And if you're not, perhaps they're just looking more for the engagement side and just trying to gauge what level to place your athlete at. Because I think the placement is intentional, right? Like it's not to hurt anybody's feelings, it's really just to align where the athlete currently is to where they'll be best set up for success in the long run, right? I think they'll also look for a calm player when you're in a chaotic environment. I think when they're younger, it's a little harder to pick up on these qualities, but you'll typically be able to gauge their level of interest and their competitiveness and whether they have some level of potential to continue moving through the different age groups and teams across the club. I think also something to look for is just general character. Are they communicating with their teammates? I think your reaction to mistakes, how you're supporting your teammates when they make mistakes, and just general soccer IQ. Are you, where are you in your development with your skills? Is there room for development? And are you strong in some areas? So I think all of these things as a whole, much like when we talked about ID camps, you're just getting evaluated on those different facets of who you are as a player. I think is usually a combination of how you act on and off the field.
Yeah, and you make a good point there about staying calm in a chaotic environment because a lot of times those at least like the first day or 2 is usually pretty crazy because as you touched on earlier, they'll usually have everyone together and then as they start getting a better picture of your level, how many years you've been playing and things like that, then they'll start breaking you out into more groups, but definitely at first at those younger ages, it can be pretty crazy. What are some of your experiences from those younger tryout days? What do you remember?
It's hard to remember specifically what happened. I do remember it felt a little nerve-wracking because I was young and you're getting watched. And I think when you're young, you also just have this preconceived notion that you have to make the top team
Mhm.
and you don't want to be, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I was definitely one of those kids who wanted to win and wanted to make the top team and be at the highest level at that time. I remember everybody was on the same field doing drills. I remember my parents would come along. I remember they would come watch. And I remember even sometimes the coaches would come speak to the parents afterwards and give them a little bit of the lay of the land. And if there was interest in the player, they would probably either let you know day of or you would get an email potentially within the next few days. That's kinda how it worked, and I think if you happen to have, a connection or, for example, when we would switch clubs, several of us from one club to another club, I think there would be, a better chance that you're getting noticed because it's just optics of, "Oh, here come the girls that are coming from this club," or, "Here's this new girl who, could potentially make this top team." So that's how I experienced tryouts before I was a little bit more committed to the higher elite clubs where you're not really moving as much anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely had similar experiences where at that younger age, you have all these coaches watching you and you're playing with a bunch of people you don't know. And I remember definitely feeling a bit of that pressure and having that same mindset of I really did want to make the top team. So I remember doing a bunch of drills and just trying super, super hard. But I think they were actually pretty fun in general. If you don't have a connection with the club or they didn't kind of watch you before and ask you to come to the tryout or something like that, you're fully new, it is common for them to start you a little farther down the ladder when they break out the teams, and that's not anything against your athlete, that's just because they are gonna rank players kind of based on what they've already seen, and if they haven't seen a player, then they're gonna probably put them farther down, but they have all the chance during that tryout to make their way up.
Yeah, definitely.
For that kind of 8 to 12 age range, when you are trying out, when you're starting to get up there to the more elite clubs and you want to make the top team, how do you prepare for a tryout without overthinking and adding a bunch of extra stress?
I think when you're a new player, it's probably going to feel a little bit stressful, but it's like any other opportunity to showcase yourself that we've talked about before. Obviously, preparation is required to do well in these situations where you're under pressure, but I think the important thing is that you're playing loosely, you're taking advantage of the opportunity without putting too much pressure on yourself. And then at the same time, I also think as a parent, it's important not to get too involved in the optics of it. Like, will my athlete make the top team? Oh my goodness, what will happen if they don't make the top team? It's not going to be the end of the world either way. Just be humble, come in knowing that you're going to be that new player and open yourself up to talking to other players who are already on the team because they'll likely give you the insight that you need, or you'll befriend the person who
Mhm.
is already on the team and settled in and will make you feel a little bit more confident and settled. So I think just taking advantage of the opportunity and showcasing your work ethic, your character, showing excitement and being willing to ask questions. If you are someone who's returning to the team, I think it's easy to feel comfortable and feel like you kind of deserve your spot. And whether or not that's the case, I think it could be a much more productive and enriching environment for yourself and for everybody else if, again, you show a little bit of humility and open yourself up to talk to the new players and try equally as hard in the drills and the scrimmages as you would if you were a new player so that it doesn't feel like everything is set in stone and there's no opportunity for anyone to make the team. Because again, whether or not that's the case, I feel like out of respect and fairness for others, I just feel like it's, much more fun to do it that way. So that's what I would say as a returning player. While it might be hard to adopt that
Mhm.
mindset, I think it's just the best thing you can do. And, you can get extra touches, get extra scrimmage time. What's better than that?
Exactly. Very true. Okay, and then obviously for these tryouts, the coaches are placing kids on the teams where they feel like they're gonna fit in the best skill wise and just all around soccer wise. And sometimes that comes with your kid not making the top team or your kid getting moved down a team, maybe if they're returning to the same club. What what would be your advice and experience with this?
Well, I think something I said earlier about not getting too involved in the tryout process is very applicable in this situation. I think that you as a parent or as an athlete should avoid overreacting to the outcome of a tryout because the reality is that it's just one stage in your development as an athlete. I don't think it's the defining factor by any means for the remainder of your career, however long that might be. And I actually think that oftentimes when the outcome is that you potentially get moved down to the lower level or you get cut. I think it's just another great opportunity to take inventory of where you might have opportunities for growth, work on them a little bit more, hone your skills that you still might need to sharpen a little bit more. And that way you can take your next opportunity to be ready and to be more technically skilled, increase your soccer IQ and come back as a better player, probably even better than you were to begin with. Because I think the whole purpose of trying to place players in the level that makes sense is so that you don't stunt their development, both as an athlete on the field and with their level of interest in the sport. Because when you get placed on the top team, this happens all the time. You get placed on the top team, you don't even see the field if you're not at that level. There's no way you're ever going to get better because you're just not getting those same minutes. You're not getting that experience, that exposure. So I do feel like there's often reasoning behind it, whether it feels fair or not. Just take it lightly, enjoy the sport. Like we always say, it's supposed to be enjoyable, right? And if you are trying to set a goal to meet a certain level, I think the best thing you can do is just be realistic of where you are and where you want to go, and then take the necessary steps in order to get to that same level.
Mhm. I agree, and I think I had this experience when I was probably 13 or 14. I had been playing for the A team, and at one of the tryouts, was brought down to the lower team, and it hurt bad, and I think, like what you were talking about, that's definitely one of the things my parents said to me, and also the coach who I had also said to me, whereas like, "Hey, like, that's just part of the game. This happens," and realizing that that happens definitely helped me a lot, and it definitely made me think, "Hey, I wanna get back up to that. How can I use that?" And
Mhm.
I think overall it ended up being a positive experience, but in the moment, it definitely did hurt, but taking the positives out of it and just understanding that it's not always gonna go your way is definitely a huge growth moment.
Yeah, and it's not a failure by any means either,
No.
like, it's just another step along the way. It's not a regression, it's not a failure. I think it's just another team, right? And you just have to make the most out of it. And I also had an experience where I remember I was very distraught by it. This was for the Olympic development program. In the first year that I tried out, there were, I remember, I think potentially 3 layers to the tryout, and the first tryout was just to make the pool of players
Mm.
that they would be further evaluating, and I got cut after that first layer, and I remember I was devastated. And the following year, I was super hesitant to go back and try out again because I was honestly a little bit scarred from not having made it, and it isn't part of your club requirements either. So, I was thinking to myself, "Why am I even doing this?" Why am I even putting myself through this? It's not really gonna even get me to college, I think. But anyways, moral of the story is that the following year, much like your story as well, was that I think I showed up with a little bit less pressure on myself because I was just kind of thinking, well, I already got caught once. What are they going to do?
Yeah,
I said,
exactly.
if they caught me again, it's fine. And that was the year that I did make the full team after those 3 sessions. And I ended up getting injured, so I didn't even play in the, couple games we had, but that's just another example of, these tryout environments happen anywhere and everywhere, and everyone's gonna experience it every once in a while, and it really, really isn't going to kill your career.
All right, and now to wrap this episode up, we are going to play a fun but informative game of parent do's and don'ts when at your athlete's tryout. So I'm going to bring up a scenario, and Valentina's going to say either do or don't.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Scenario number one. Should I coach my athlete every step of the way?
Don't. Don't in the sense where you're being overly intense, and we have a whole episode on this, so definitely listen to it if you feel like you're an overly reactive parent.
All right. Scenario two. Should I ask my athlete's coach on the first day of tryouts if we have a starting spot on the team?
Definitely don't do that. That one's pretty self-explanatory.
Should I bribe the team manager with money?
Don't. Don't do that. You might get kicked out.
Should I ask other parents what they think about my athlete?
Unless it comes up in a question, yeah, don't. Rory's shaking his head
Yeah,
no.
definitely don't do
Don't
that.
don't ask that, yeah.
Should I be supportive of whatever team my athlete makes?
Yes, do, definitely do. There's few things better than a supportive parent.
Exactly. And obviously, the main theme here is don't be over the top. Don't be in the coaches' faces. Don't be in your players' face. The coaches are trying to figure out, they're dealing with hundreds, maybe thousands of kids. Your kid is playing with a bunch of people they've never played with before, so there's just a lot going on.
Yeah, it just makes it more confusing and complicated and, it's not that serious. Like it's going to be okay, really. So,
Good answers, though.
yeah, I'm glad. But as we always say to you all, feel free to reach out with your questions, your concerns. We're always happy to give our perspectives and talk through potential worries or thoughts or even just stories you might want to share.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Yes, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.